Hello everyone, and welcome to Amman Talks NRL SuperCoach, back for another weekly preview. This week we are previewing round 17, another mini bye week just after one of the major weeks in round 16. Looking at the trade targets, previewing captains, all that good stuff. Amman starting early, date night from Dino. No, not quite. No, I just was able to start early today, but that's more or less it. no other reasons for it, but yeah, it's always good to be able to start nice and early. Gets things done, wrapped up pretty quick, and yeah, I'm able to watch MasterChef, which I do like as well. So yeah, to be honest, that's probably the biggest reason. Dem clips, okay, let's go. Already hitting us with a question about KPP to Nicho, too sideways. Yeah, probably is a bit too sideways in my opinion. What's to go with Nick Meaney? Yeah, obviously some big news out of TLT, so no Nick Meaney at all in the Storm lineup. No reasons has been given yet as to why that's the case. A lot of people speculating it's because of pretty poor defense. I'd probably say, yeah, I can see some reasonings for that. Joe Chan to Marco's got a question about Joe Chan to Sharp or Armstrong to Ronaldo. Yeah, look, we'll definitely talk about the likes of Ronaldo, Mulatalo, Fletcher Sharp, both very key trade-in targets for this week. Holden, I'm not going to say the whole username, but that's a fantastic username. The hair though, yes, the hair is looking good. Thank you all very much. Shout out to my new barber who's sorted me out with a good haircut. Jason says, purposely make sure every Tuesday night that I'm free to watch you. Oh, bless you, Jason. You're awesome. Pablo Escobar, Preston to Nicola. Lots of questions already about trading in Britain, Nicola. So he is in the top 10 most traded in players. So definitely we'll be discussing him. Best 2RF that plays 19. Sorry guys, I don't have a slide set on second row. There was a few questions about it. Just ran out of time pulling that together, but we can still definitely talk through all of that. But we'll get straight into it. So obviously starting a little bit early. Your Gazaraki, by the way, there you go. You got a username change. Gazaraki's got the username change. We'll get started into it. And look, we'll hopefully, if we can wrap through some of the stuff more quickly, then we can do more questions at the end of the stream. Obviously Origin is tomorrow, so I'll preface a lot of what could be happening with players, restings, all that kind of stuff. Will be subject to what happens tomorrow night in Origin. So we'll probably won't be able to do something on Thursday, just I've got work and other stuff on. But maybe on Friday I might be able to release a short video with some updated thoughts, but we can at least discuss stuff and speculate on things in today's stream. Best 2RF that plays 19, yeah, Cooper probably has answered the question. It's probably Dave for feeder, to be honest. In terms of how I'm going, last week was a good week. I ended up on 1098, so season rank now at 4,650. So was a close to 2,000 spot green arrow, so pretty happy with that. Last mini buy round, the round 14 was a really tough round for me, so I'm hoping to avoid some of that carnage that I had in that previous week. But hopefully it all goes pretty smoothly. So yeah, that's kind of where we are at the moment. Pretty happy with the ranking and how that's obviously I'd prefer to be much higher, but considering the start that I had a few weeks ago, I'm happy enough to be in this current position. So SJ to Nicho, yeah, obviously some news about SJ as well, which we'll quickly actually now get onto some of the main takeaways from TLT from today. So a few more updates in terms of, where coaches have named Origin players in terms of have they named them in the team or in the reserves. So not much from the Bulldogs, I guess, Origin impact-wise, apart from... So Jacob Preston has been named at 18th man. I know a few people went on him a few weeks ago. He looks like he's maybe going to be named this week. Stephen Crichton is to be monitored, how he goes post-Origin. For the Warriors, DWZ is back, although I know a lot of people did sell him last week, and fair enough. The way that the Warriors have been playing, especially in that game against the Titans, not great at all. SJ out for 4 weeks as well due to an Achilles injury. So, there was some talking points around, do you sell SJ? Do you just cop the price that he's at now? With the news that he's out for 4 weeks, I think that makes the question of selling much, much simpler to answer. So yeah, he's definitely a sell the way that he's going at the moment and being out for that long. With the Broncos, I know a few people are looking at the likes of a Payne Haas this week. Some people are looking at offloading a Terrell May after he's delivered again in one of the major bye weeks. People are thinking, cool. I mean, Whisper puts this very succinctly. He's got a very fraudulent mid-60s average because it's comprised of 110s, 120s, and then like 30s and 40s. So he's a very, very much a roller coaster, Terrell May. But with Payne Haas, we'll have to see how he goes post tomorrow. But he's been named in the reserves, as have all of the other Origin players for the Broncos. One thing I wanted to mention with Arthur's back, Karapani has moved to the bench, so people may be looking at him as enough. let's see how this plays out long term when all the players are back. But at the moment, being named on the bench isn't great. You don't think he's going to be playing many big minutes, but he could drop out of that team for sure if some of the Origin players do come back in. For the Knights, a few meaningful things here. So Fletcher Sharp has been named at fullback. He's also the most traded player in this week. No David Armstrong again. He's in the reserves. Will Price is making in a debut at 5'8" for the Knights, so something a little bit different there. Kai Pearce-Paul is on the bench, so of course he missed, was it not last week in round 15? He had that foot injury. Barry Tui's come out on Twitter saying he expects him to play. But coming off the bench, I'm kind of thinking Kai Pearce-Paul might get 40, 45 minutes and pump out a 40, 45 as well. So I can see why some people are maybe looking at offloading. But yeah, look, he's still around 19 number, so definitely need to chat. I feel like I should have made a 2RF slide now, but just ran out of time. On the Eels, I just wanted to call out that Matt Dury's on the bench. Shout out to Matt Dury, who I owned from rounds 1 till 27 last year. Going him instead of Bryce Cartwright last year was heavy viewing. But look, Matt Dury did have some benefits. I think I used him as a loophole a couple of times last year. But I guess the only other thing out of the Eels maybe to mention is Joey Lussick again hasn't been named in the 17, but look, that could change game day. I pray that he does not get into that team because he's just an absolute AE nightmare. Storm is where a lot of big things did happen. So, Harry Grant was named to play, which is great, subject to whatever happens in Origin. Joe Chan on the bench. Jack Howarth moved from wing to centre. Xavier Coates has also been named. But Suafalongo is out of that team, which we probably kind of expected. I think being named on the bench last week was a bit of a surprise. But with a few of the players coming back like Coates, Falongo is probably someone you'd be very happy with his cash growth and some of his scores in the last few weeks. But very easy, I think, to sell now, and because they don't cover round 19. The big one, though, is Nick Meaney, so no explanation been given as to why he's been not named. People thinking it's due to poor defense, and it's not just been last week. There have been a few weeks now where he's not had the best defense. The interesting thing out of this, though, is how long could this happen? Could it just be a week? But it does mean that if without Nick Meaney on that side, I'd expect Pappenhausen to goal kick. So people who jumped on Pappenhausen last week may be a little bit disappointed with his score. You could see some good things for you this week if Pappy's goal kicking, because we know Pappy when he was goal kicking was just an absolute Supercoach must-have. From the Dolphins-Dragons game, not too much apart from that, Lomax and Hamiso have both been named for their teams. All of the Panthers Origin players have been named, so the likes of Luai, To'o, because people may be looking at To'o this week, Isaiah Yeo, Liam Martin, which maybe has a flow-on impact to Liam Henry. Some people maybe have held on to him. I've held on to him so far. He's got a 40 break-even. Maybe it's manageable to keep him for another week. If someone like a Liam Martin doesn't back up, maybe Liam Henry comes into that starting team. Could be better things for him. Meaney has a calf injury. Okay, cool. Thanks for clarifying that. So has that come out recently? Because maybe I missed that. But yeah, let me know, guys, where you found that, and also where that's being reported, and if it's being reported for how long. Because it does make things like calf injuries, just based on what NRL Physio says, it does kind of there can be injuries that are a little bit the recovery can be a little bit difficult to kind of fully predict, and there can be niggling injuries. So it's just thinking of the flow and impacts. One, for Jack Howarth, people may be looking at Jack Howarth as a downgrade, right? He's 2RF only, but if he picks up center wing eligibility, all of a sudden people may have a perfect downgrade who may enough out eventually, or he's currently starting. So Howarth could become an option. Pappy goal kicking. There's just a couple of flow on things with Meaney if he does have a calf injury. So if you found a link to an article or something stating that, yeah, please drop it in the chat. That would actually be pretty useful. But yeah, okay, guys. So the Meaney calf injury seems to be the go there. With the Cowboys players, so Nanai has been rested, so he's not been named and probably won't be. But all the other Origin players have been named in the reserves. So main ones thinking, if you hear, Ruben Cotter, Val Holmes. For the Roosters, flow and impact to Terrell May is that Lindsay Collins has been named on the bench. Terrell May to start. Now that could change on game day, but if it runs out as it is, probably a good thing for Terrell May. He might get those extra 5-10 minutes, which is all he really needs to just put out a good score. There was some rumours of some of the Roosters players being rested for Origin this week. Doesn't look like that's quite happened because Collins has been named on the bench and Angus Crichton has been named to start. Satili Tupouniua is also named at centre. So that helps probably the case for Angus to back up because there's one less back rower who would potentially eat into his minutes. With Satili playing at centre, Gus maybe looks more likely to at least play some good minutes. So I'm definitely looking at him as a potential trading target. Finally, for the Tigers, Ruben Porter has been named again to start, but John Bateman is named in the reserves. So I hope that people have enough depth where they don't have to rely on playing Porter this week, but with Bateman in the reserves, he could be a late in, and that they play the very last game of the round. So something to just call out there with anyone who maybe is looking at playing Ruben Porter this week. Just jumping into the chat, Nick, here he is, the legend. Thank you, Nick. I've just chatted with you a little bit on Instagram today. You're lovely bloke. Very much appreciate your support and generosity. Benny G, welcome to becoming a member. Thank you, Benny. Look, Benny, also one of the best guys out there. Very awesome to see you becoming a member as well. Corey with a couple of questions about Nicho or saving the trade. Fainu to Nicho. If that's Samuel Fainu, there's no way you sell him. He's dual, covers 19, covers 20. Easy hold. But Nicho for sure is a big trading target. Is Hynes a must? Points over money. Okay, a couple of questions about Nicho and Hynes. So what we'll probably first jump onto is some of the Sharks players, because they do feature in the other, and I can free up time for questions maybe. All right, so yeah, the Trindle effect. So I put this graphic out on Twitter, put it out on Instagram as well yesterday. The one thing that's a little bit different is I've added Kale Iro, because a couple of people did ask for Iro to be added into the graphic. So what I've got here are all of the Sharks players, the main relevant Supercoach players from the Sharks. So sorry guys, I've noticed it's getting a little bit frozen, so apologies. If you can still hear me, that's okay, but I've noticed the video was just chopping in and out a little bit. But I've got my stream actually open up on my phone as well, just so I can monitor it as well. At the moment, it seems to be still running okay. It just might be a little bit choppy. That's all. I think the microwave just got turned on actually. That's what I can hear it in the background. So that's probably the main reason for that little bit. But on the Sharks, so I've got Hynes, Mulatalo, Katoa, Ramian, Britton Nicho, and Kale Iro. And of course, the one thing to note is that this is a very small sample size, right? Trindle, in 2024, we've only had 15 games so far for the Sharks, 14 or 15, because there's a couple of buys in there. But just looking, excluding that fact, taking out the score of 3 for Hynes, with Trindle in the team, he's averaged 77, and without Trindle in the team, he's averaged 123. There's only 3 games where he's made it all the way through there. He did have that score of 3 when Trindle was in there, so I do want to preface that too. But it's and look, this graphic I think just makes it abundantly clear. When Trindle's not in that team, Hynes gets all the ball, and all of the right-hand side players benefit. So Hynes' average went up. Katoa, Ramian, and Britton Nicho, all of their averages went up when Trindle wasn't in the team. And the 2 left-hand side players in Mulatalo and Iro, their averages were higher when Trindle was in the team. So it's a very obvious conclusion to say that, but it's nice to see that the numbers actually back that up. So this is why a lot of people are looking at Mulatalo, because very early in the season, when Trindle was in that team for the first 8 weeks, Mulatalo was killing it. His average so far this year with Trindle is 78 compared to 43. The one other thing to caveat is that the games that Trindle wasn't there was a couple of harder games where they versed the likes of the Roosters and Melbourne, but a lot of the other games outside of that they've had so far this year haven't been that difficult. And you can see the draw below me as well. They don't really have that hard of a draw for the run home either. So I know lots of people say the Sharks have been blessed again with a very soft draw, but look, it is what it is, so let's take advantage of it. So I'm not going to read out the entire draw. I've spoken about it quite a few times in recent videos, but they don't have any more buys except for round 20, and a very soft run, I think, overall for the rest of the year. And I would think that now the combination is going to be Trindle and Nicho Hynes. So I think it's probably worth looking at the averages with Trindle as maybe the more likely of what you're going to expect out of these guys if you are looking at trading them in. So I really like Mulatalo as a trade-in. I will say the Bulldogs matchup this week is definitely not like an absolute, oh my God, you have to target this guy, because Bulldogs have been very good defensively this year. The Roosters put on 26, but the Roosters probably one of the best attacking teams in the competition. I still think Bulldogs on their day can defend very well. So I'm not looking at even this week. Mulatalo, I can't remember what his actual break even is, apologies, but I don't think it's that low. So even Mulatalo can still wait a week. He's got a break even of around 73. So even if he goes out and has a good score and scores 75, 80, his price won't change that much. So I really like him as a sub 500k option. I prefer him the most out of any of the Sharks backline players, because he probably does have the most ceiling, and the numbers back this up that when Trindle's in the team, he's an awesome option. A lot of people are looking at Britton Nicholas, and rightly so. He's had that big score the round before last where he scored 120. His base was a little bit low in that game, so he had base of 43. He's only had one game this season where he based more than 60, and that was in round 14. Apart from that, most of his scores in the base around the 40 to 45s. So we'll just preface that, while Nicholas is a solid option, with Trindle in the team, I probably think Nicholas is going to be around this 58 to 60 average. If Trindle wasn't there, then I think he might have been around that mid-60s, which was probably offering a little bit more value. But saying all of that, I still think at his price at 570k, there's not that many guys who cover round 19, and the Sharks are a very clear target for round 19 because of this soft draw. Look, I know the Titans and Tigers just won big on the weekend, but they would objectively still be viewed as good opponents to target. So I can see a lot of the appeal for going for a lot of these Sharks players. I do own Nicholas at the moment, and I looked ahead at this soft draw and the round 19 coverage as two main reasons why I wanted to trade him in. I just probably want to temper expectations a little bit because people are, I think he's the second most traded in player. Someone asked earlier in the chat about Kai Pierce-Paul to Nicholas. I feel that's a little bit sideways because I think, sure, this week, Pierce-Paul, if he's off the bench, might score 45 to 50, but they both cover round 19, and I think that is going to be a very tricky week to cover. One thing to also be aware of if you are trading in Sharks players, they do miss round 20. I do think that could be a very, very tricky week to cover because you're going to have Sharks and Parramatta, and I think the Dragons miss out that week already. So the likes of Lomax, a lot of Dylan Browns, etc., a lot of these Sharks players will miss. And I always feel like after game 3 is when a lot of Origin players do get rested. So someone else actually asked here in the chat as well. So this is from Nick, how many Sharkies players would you have in your team for the run home? Look, Hynes for sure absolutely is a no-brainer. He has to be in your team, and we'll get onto Hynes in a bit more detail in a little bit as well. But yes, absolutely, it would be Hynes. Mulatalo, I think I'm happy enough to have in my run home side, as with Kale Iro. So Kale Iro, just my thoughts on him very quickly. I don't think I'm actually looking to sell him at this point because he's like a perfect kind of 6th or 7th center wing. He offers good depth. He's got really solid base. So you can play him on any given matchup, and he's not going to give you a bad score. And look, with Trindle in that team, we had an average just over 60. So he can be a perfect depth option with a really good draw for the rest of the year. So I like Iro still as a hold. And then probably Nicholas. I'd probably say the 4 of them, the 4 Sharkies feels about right to me as a good number. Hynes, maybe 1 or 2 of their outside backs, and maybe Nicholas. Probably feels like a nice, safe number. Thank you, Nick, for the donations. Very much appreciate that. Looking at 4 Sharkies for the run home: Nicholas, Hynes, Ronnie, and Katoa. So yeah, I get the appeal there. I will say for sure, looking at these numbers, I would prefer Iro to Katoa, and I think preferences for the left-hand side backline players like Hynes. Even with Trindle in the team, averaging 77, apart from Jerome Hughes in the last few weeks, realistically, no halfback has really been averaging more than, I think, 70 this year. I'm actually just going to quickly pull this up. So you can't see it on my screen, but I'm just going to have a look at this. So if you look at season averages for halfbacks this year, so Nicho Hynes is still the most with 83. Jerome Hughes is next on 79, and then next up is Cherry Evans at 67. So even Nicho Hynes at his quote-unquote worst with Trindle in the team, he was still averaging 77. That would still be the second or the third best halfback in SuperCoach. So for me, it doesn't really matter even if Trindle's is in the team. It probably just means Hynes isn't going to be that, oh my God, scary 150-point ceiling every week. But look, with this draw, are you not going to have Nicho Hynes? You absolutely will. So he's for sure a lock in the run home team. So that's kind of my thoughts, I guess, on some of the Sharkies trades in. Nicholas, I think, is a fairly solid trade in. I think ideally I wouldn't be trading the likes of Kai Pierce-Paul or any other guy who covers round 19. If you've got some kind of mid-range second row forward that you're looking to upgrade, like a Liam Henry, for example, via duels, I like that as a nice little switch if you've got the duels to do that. Someone in here was asking about Curran to Nicholas. Even Curran, he had a pretty poor game last week, but I don't think I would be doing that move because, again, looking at Nicholas, if he averages 58 to 60 with Trindle in the side, Curran is offering around 55 in average. You're really not getting that much difference. The only benefit is you're getting that round 19 number. So I guess you just have to value that. But again, that kind of trade doesn't feel like it's a huge swing in terms of your upscoring from moving from Curran to Nicholas. Nicholas probably does have a bit more of a ceiling, but again, with Trindle in the team, more of the ball goes down the left. So I think that's probably the couple of things I'll mention just on Nicholas. Couple of questions here. Manu to Mulatalo. Nah, absolutely not. I know Manu's got a really high break even, but look, he's got the Tigers this week. Look, I know Tigers just won, but he's got Tigers this week. Manu's got Dragons then in round 18. And the Roosters have just got a pretty good run themselves for the rest of the year. I wouldn't be probably doing that particular downgrade in my opinion. Garrick is a popular sell. What's it doing? Look, I haven't really got a section on Garrick, but to me, I don't think I'd be selling Ruben Garrick at all. He's got, round 19 cover. He's a season keeper for sure. Just had an unfortunate couple of head knocks in that game, I know, as a captain of him. But yeah, that's some of my thoughts on the Sharkies players. Very quickly, we'll kind of segue that onto Nicho Hynes, because I know there was a couple of people on Twitter asking about, do you, someone here in the chat earlier was asking, well, Cooper Bailey earlier was saying, can't wait for 700k Hynes. Yep, very tempting. Romeo NY was asking, is Hynes a must? Points over money. So I guess the thing with Hynes this week, as I mentioned before, Bulldogs have been a pretty good defense all year. Sam Walker did just score 109 points on them, but he required 4 try assists and things like that. I think with Hynes, yes, he could deliver some big points this week, but he does have a 212 break even. And a couple of scenarios that I did put is, if he scores X score, what would be his projected price drop? So if he was to come out and score 71, which is I think is what SuperCoach has got as his projected score, a score of 71 would make him lose 117k. So he'd be going down to 750, 760k. I don't know what his next break even would be, but I do think by then that score of 3 would drop out of his rolling average, if I'm not mistaken. I might just quickly double check that just so I'm not talking out of my you-know-what. Yeah, that's right. So he scored 68 against the Dolphins. He had that score of 3 versus Penrith before that. Once he scores, let's say he scores 71 this week, from next week onwards, his 3-round rolling average, his 3-round rolling average will still be based on a score of 3 in his rolling average. So he still will have a really high break even next week. The difference is then he's actually got a good matchup. He's got the Titans at home. So very, very, yeah. So I'm actually having a quick look here at NRL Stats, NRL SC Stats price change calculator. If you plug in a score of 83 for him, yeah, he's got a projected price change loss of minus 100k. So it'd be 771k, and he would have a break even of 100. So his break even is still relatively high, but again, 100 break even starts getting to a point where, look, okay, 100 break even versus the Titans and then the Tigers in round 19, when he will be the most captain player for sure, assuming Mitch Moses stays in that New South Wales team, then you are going to want to get Hynes in for sure by round 19. I'm looking at round 18 potentially as a good week to get him in, because it's a really good matchup and his break even is not going to be that much worse. It's not going to be that bad, and it's definitely achievable. So I think this week I'm not overly looking at prioritizing Hynes just because the matchup as well. I think it's not a matchup where I'm really scared of him going 150, 160. I think Trindle in the team, that effect does lower Hynes scores historically. Plus he does have that really high break even. So I think a couple of reasons, even if he goes out and scores 91 this week, he'll still lose 94k. I just think just try to have a plan for Hynes maybe next week when he's around the 760 to 770 or 780k. The more difficult question was who do you actually sell to get Hynes? This is a question I'm kind of battling with myself. So someone here is in the chat, 85 is saying Sam Walker straight to Nicho is looking viable over the next week or so. So at the moment, I've got Sam Walker, I've got Cody Walker, I've got Lockie Galvin and Dillbags. They're my 4 halves at the moment. So only Sam Walker of that lot does not cover round 19. But then Sam Walker's got Tigers this week. So even Sam Walker this week with the Tigers matchup, I think I'll be keeping. Even against the Dragons in round 18, depending on what Sam Walker's break even looks like. Hopefully if he's around this 725k, 730, 740, I might be able to just do a 1 straight swap from Walker to Hynes next week. And I think this is dependent on, do I like the signs of what I see from Nicho this week? Or if he has another really low score, maybe doesn't look so good. But I think definitely by round 19, it will be a very serious consideration to go Sam Walker to Nicho, because Sam Walker misses 19 and then Hynes has got Tigers. So it's look, straight swap, and all my other 3 halves do play round 19. Ideally, I would prefer to keep someone like a Sam Walker, I think, over a Cody Walker or even a Lockie Galvin, just because Sam Walker is part of a really attacking team and he's the goal kicker and he's definitely got a ceiling. We saw it last week, like 109 points, including a sin bin. He's gone 172 versus the Dragons earlier in the season. I guess the only thing that gives me some comfort of maybe selling Sam Walker is that he comes back to Melbourne, Manly, the Dolphins. They're not like the easiest matchups, and then it's a bye in round 23. So definitely round 20 to round 23, I would prefer, I think, Nicho. Look, round 24 onwards, yes, that's probably when I think Roosters draw does become much better. But at that point, I'm kind of like a few weeks into owning Nicho. Maybe I can take a punt on Sam Walker, or maybe I just go to Cleary. So I think in the most likely situation, I'll probably be selling Sam Walker to Hynes either in 18 or I do it in 19. Or if Walker keeps on absolutely killing it and I just can't see a reason to sell, then maybe I might look at selling one of Galvin or Cody Walker. I think deal bags for me will stay, but it's going to be one of Cody Walker or Galvin. Galvin does have some tough matchups coming up with the Roosters, Melbourne, and then the Sharks in the next 3. But he's been really solid all season. Cody probably doesn't have that good of a floor, so I think I'm slightly leaning towards maybe selling Cody if I was to sell one of him or Galvin. But look, this is a decision I'm probably going to defer until maybe it might not even be next week. It could be in round 19. But that's some of my early thoughts. Jerome Hughes owners for sure have got a big dilemma because, look, Hughes doesn't cover round 19, but he's just been absolutely killing it. 2 really nice matchups as well. So he's got Canberra and then the West Tigers. Then he has a buy in round 19. But look, Jerome Hughes, you will make money probably selling him to Nicho Hynes. So I think, again, if you're looking at targeting your buy numbers, Hughes to Hynes in round 19 could be one of the most popular trades. And yeah, I think that's going to be a pretty reasonable one. So Tony Vo's asking here, who would you trade out for Hynes, Hughes, or Sam Walker? So yeah, this is really, really difficult because neither of the two play around 19. I would probably sell. I mean, look, let's assume you're selling in round 19, just so I can make the decision a little bit easier. Probably selling Sam Walker. So a couple of reasons. One, they both have the bye. They play each other in round 20. After that, though, Hughes doesn't have any more buys for the rest of the year. And I think his matchups are a little bit better. So let's say after round 20, Walker's got Manly, Dolphins bye. In that same time, Hughes has got Parramatta, Dragons, and Rabbitohs. So I think for sure I'd prefer those 3 games from Jerome Hughes. Maybe it comes down also to when Munster is back, because when Munster is back, you'd think that Hughes is going to reduce in scoring because he's been doing so well just taking over that team. But even then, when Munster was in the side, he was still putting out some good scores. Like, he's got 100 early in the year versus the Broncos. He's scored a 73 and 95. Like, he's just in really, really good form. So I think no need to have to sell Hughes just because Munster comes back. So yeah, my early thoughts would be to sell Walker out of the two, just because even though Walker is goal kicking, the Roosters have got that many star players that, they can not have to rely on him to score points. So that's some of my earlier thoughts on that one. But yeah, just in case people are looking at potentially getting in Hynes this week, I think it's viable to wait until next week or even until round 19. But yeah, even round 18 is going to be a little bit scary not owning. But, I guess the thing with waiting on Hynes is that, look, most people's alternatives are probably Jerome Hughes. He's got the Tigers in round 18. And Sam Walker's got the Dragons in round 18. So it's not like, oh my God, I've got a halfback who's versing like Penrith. Like, you've got pretty good options in those particular weeks. Keith here saying, I think Hughes is a great pod against the people who will flock to Nicho. Sharks are not outstanding at the moment, and Nicho's a confidence player, and at the moment he's looked average. So, look, he's made some comments, Nicho, about how he wants to turn it around and he wants to kind of, make sure he puts in good performances. I'd be, for sure, like, if you ask me who would I prefer out of Hynes or Hughes for the rest of the year, for me, it's still going to be Hynes. Even, like, as I said before, Hughes is averaging 79 this year, and he's having an incredible month. Hynes he just has that ceiling. He's gone 160. Hughes would have to do so much to get to like 160. And with Hynes, even with Trindle at 77, that's matching Hughes' season average at his like worst. So still think Hynes is better than Hughes in my opinion, but I get what you're saying. For sure, Hughes could just actually be a really good hold because the Storm run after that round 19, round 20 period is actually still pretty good up until round 24. Probably toughens up a little bit at that point. This guy, Amit Sack, is asking, is that D Walker? Do you mean C Walker, Brown, or Hughes to Hynes? I'm not sure who D Walker is. I'm assuming that's Sam Walker, looking at where S and D are on the keyboard. Yeah, I haven't really spoken too much about Brown. I mean, Brown, to be honest, could maybe be a sell even for Hynes, but it's just that he covers 19 as well. So it doesn't feel great selling guys who are covering round 19. But yes, for sure, like Dilbach, I guess with Parramatta, I know they're the bottom of the ladder at the moment and we can all, joke about that. But I do think that with Moses coming back into the team, they should probably offer some better performances. Alrighty, a few people asking questions about SJ as well. So someone was asking about keep Tamari Martin now that SJ is out again for a few weeks. I mean, Tamari Martin, when SJ was not in that team, was absolutely killing it. The Warriors don't have the greatest of runs. We've got Broncos, Bulldogs, a bye, and then Canberra. So those are the 3 out of the 4 games you're going to get when SJ's out. After that, still it's a little bit better with West Tigers and then Parramatta. I mean, Tamari Martin's, I think, really, really expensive. So I think he's must be in the 670Ks. 698K. He's got 111 break even. Look, I get, it's a difficult one because I think if Hynes didn't have this crazy high break even, I'd probably say, look, just sell him to Hynes and just lock in that halfback. I'd be happy to keep him, I think, this week because even if he goes down in price, Hynes is still going to go down much more in price. You can keep Tamari Martin then for round 18 versus the Dogs, or you can just make a straight switch to Nicho Hynes. So I think for this week, at least, you can reassess and keep him for this particular week. Burton's going to be a delicious pickup when he bottoms out. Yeah, someone like Matt Burton, he's got a really high break even as well, 152. So hard to say for people who are owning him what they should do because he's a playing player. It's kind of always hard to sell playing players. But look, with 152 break even, he will lose a lot of cash. The Bulldogs do have a pretty good run for the remainder of the season, apart from Sharks and then maybe the Broncos away in round 21. There's no matchup that really scares me, so I think even Burton is still a solid hold. But if he's your main ticket to Nicho Hynes, then I can see the reason to making that move early. But even then, still, I think you could potentially wait even a week or two on that one. Sorry guys, someone's asking, is there a slide on second row forwards? I don't actually have a slide on second row forwards, but I will make sure to discuss them in a bit more detail. But yeah, that's some of my thoughts, I guess, on this whole halfback position. I've got Tyron Wishart here. Of course, Wishart is kind of dependent on when Munster comes back. AJ29 is saying trade Moses to Hynes next week. I think Moses is a completely fine trade because he will, pending the Origin game, but if he plays game 3 for New South Wales, he'll miss round 19. You definitely want Nicho Hynes versus the Tigers in that week. So yeah, I think Moses to Hynes next week is a very, very straightforward move in my opinion. Some other sections. So we'll quickly talk about Fletcher Sharp. So I haven't actually seen that many questions about Fletcher Sharp at the moment, which I'm a little bit surprised about considering he's the number 1 most traded in player. But is he? Let me check. Yes, he is. So 6,000 people have traded in Fletcher Sharp. I'm actually going to have a quick look at the top 5% of super coaches and see what those trade trends are. Yeah, Fletcher Sharp's still number 1. Then it's Nikora, Mulatalo, Jermaine Sarko's 4th, then Nicho Hynes. And then enough. Miles Martin, front row forward, second row forward, is the 6th most traded in player by super coaches ranked in the top 5%. So there you go. People are thinking it's enough season. To'o's number 7, Angus Crichton is 8th, Carraz is 9, and then Lomax is 10. So Zach's asking a question about what do I do with Fa'alongo. Look, maybe I'll quickly actually talk about that first because maybe that's relevant. Who do you sell and then who do you buy? So yeah, with Fa'alongo, look, he's been not named in the team at all this week, which I think was the expectation when Xavier Coates was going to be playing for the Storm, and he was benched last week as well. Look, Fa'alongo to me feels like a very straightforward sell now. So he's 532k, so he's made more than 200k, so he made some good money on him. He's got a break even of 51, and look, he's not even been named in the team. That's the main thing, and he doesn't cover round 19. So I think for sure, he's an easy one for me that I would be selling. We've talked a little bit about Mulatalo. He's probably my preferred sub 500k center wing to consider. A couple of others that I didn't end up putting any stats. Well, actually, I think I do have stats for them a little bit later. But I've got there are a couple of other ones. The 3 ones that stick out to me, Alex Johnston, Isaac Tungo, and Greg Marzu. So all 3 of those plus Mulatalo all cover round 19. But I do prefer Mulatalo just because I think he's got the best draw, and the numbers suggest that with Trindle in the team, his average should be increasing. So look, Fa'alongo, if you can do Fa'alongo to Mulatalo, that's a very straightforward move that I'd be doing in my opinion. If you want to free up some cash and you've got the duels, I really do like Fletcher Sharp, who I haven't spoken about yet in full detail, but look, Fletcher Sharp has looked really good in his first 2 games versus Melbourne and then Penrith. He scored very well Supercoach-wise in those games. He's got what looks like a Supercoach-friendly game. Like, he likes to take runs, tackle busts, things like that. And he covers round 17 this week, which is a tricky week. Covers round 19, which is also a tricky week. And covers round 20, which is probably, I think, going to be the trickiest week of them all. Sounds like very Lord of the Rings there. 1 round to rule them all, probably round 20. So I think Fletcher Sharp is a really good downgrade. Should make good coin, which I'll show you in that slide about him. But Farlongo down to him, I think, is a really good way to free up some funds. Shifter Pods here asking what to do with C and K. So I don't have a section specifically on fullbacks. I'll quickly tackle that though. So C and K, like, it's tough. Like, the Warriors don't have a fantastic draw. Look, you can kind of put what happened last week as a bit of a one-off. I don't think that's going to happen that often again. And that's by far his lowest score this year. His other score lowest was 40, C and K. What I will say though is, like, by not covering round 19, he obviously loses that appeal. Broncos Bulldogs the next 2 weeks isn't great. So I think you probably just have to ask yourself, when you traded in C and K, like, what were you hoping for him? Because you knew he wouldn't cover round 19. So were you just looking at round 16 as a week to get ahead? That obviously didn't pan out versus the Titans. I do think that he would not be in my top 2 fullbacks for the rest of the year. Tedesco is probably going to be one of them. Another one could easily be Latrell, could be Turbo, who when he comes back, we think in round 18. It could easily be Reece Walsh. There are plenty of other options to consider. I just don't think CNK is going to be there. And he does have a 131 break even. If you don't at the moment own Tedesco, even though Tedesco is really expensive now, I think he's now in the 900s, you're going to need about, you're going to pretty much need 200k to go CNK to Teddy. But Teddy versus Tigers and then the Dragons, I 100% prefer him for the rest of the year and for the next 2 rounds. So I think if you don't own Teddy, it sucks, but 200k I'd be trying to free up and going CNK to Tedesco. Or if you just want to not cop that price drop from CNK, you could free up a ton of cash and go down to Fletcher Sharp and free up like 500k. But yeah, I would probably lean a little bit towards CNK being a sell at the moment. Swift AU, any cheapies for SJ, or do I hold him for now? Look, I don't. If you've got the ability to switch to 5'8", I like a few options there. Like Galvin is still a good option. The draw is a little bit tough the next 3 weeks, but he does cover round 19. Or you can go someone like Max Plath, who I think is still sub 600k, so he's not outrageously expensive. He covers 19 as well, and you just know what you're going to get from him. He's super solid. Like, his last 4 scores have been 61, 77, 71, 62. Like, awesome. You definitely, if Eshe was scoring that, you'd be like, yeah, sweet. So I think I'd be looking at maybe going Eshe to someone like a Plath, maybe a Galvin. Cheapy wise, not much in the 5'8 spot. You can refer back to maybe last week's stream where I spent a heap of time talking about downgrades. But I do think there's not many options at 5'8. So I'd probably think towards going up a little bit, going maybe towards the Fletcher Sharp, not Fletcher Sharp, sorry, going up towards maybe a Max Plath. He kind of sticks out to me maybe as a very solid one. But yeah, Farlongo, I think sell. A couple of people, no one in the chat at the moment is asking about Talangi, but a couple of people were asking about him on Twitter. With Talangi, I really do think it comes down to your round 19 numbers. If you need the round 19 numbers and you're really short, for sure I'd say hold on to Talangi. The next few weeks are pretty decent. Newcastle, Rabbitohs and Titans, 3 good matchups. And then he does have the bye in round 20. Like Talangi, to me, if I owned, yes, he's got a break even of 85, but you know, he's made really good coin. Even if he next 3 weeks averages like 50, he might go down in price to say low 500s. You're still selling him for like more than 300k for what you originally bought him for if you bought him when he was bottom dollar. So you still got some good cash out of him, and you're still selling him for a good price as well in round 20. So I think Talangi, I would lean towards, if you don't have the round 19 cover, to hold, because the next few weeks are pretty good. But for sure, you know, similar options that I said with Farlongo, you know, Talangi down to Mulatalo frees up quite a bit of coin. I like that move as well. You're locking in probably someone I think you can keep for the rest of the year. Or you've got some pod options like Isaac Tungo, to be honest. Like, I've got a little bit on him later, but I wouldn't really be going to him unless Cleary's back. Marzu, maybe, but he hasn't really been seeing, like, he still doesn't really seem the best to me. And then AJ, like Alex Johnston, I still think I'm going to keep repeating myself, but I just haven't seen enough out of the Rabbitohs attack with Jack Wyden. He just runs the ball too much and is just not conducive for Alex Johnson to score well. how did I do last week, Aman? If you go to the early in the stream, I scored 1098. So it was a pretty good week. I went up a couple of thousand spots. Let's see, there's a few questions here. Hey, Mons, would I go Edwards to Sharp? I mean, Dylan Edwards has been named, and without Cleary, Edwards goal kicking, who are Penrith versing? I think they're versing the Cowboys at home. I don't think I'd be selling Edwards, to be honest, this week. I get the appeal of Fletcher Sharp, but I look at that as more like a points play. Look, if Edwards gets rested, I believe the Knights do play later in the week, so I'm just going to quickly check that. You might have the flexibility to make that switch. So, no, you don't. Sorry, Newcastle play on the Saturday, but Penrith play on the Sunday. Yeah, look, my first instinct is I think to hold, because I think Edwards' goal kicking can easily score 80, 90, while Fletcher Sharp still makes good coin. I don't view him as like an absolute must. And so I guess you also have to think about, are you prioritizing points right now, or are you still trying to gain cash? Because then I think, yeah, fine. If you're looking at the cash play, then make that trade and you free up so much money. And we've seen good things out of Fletcher Sharp. Very quickly on Armstrong, I think, yeah, he's probably still a sell now. Has been named in the 17. Looks like it's going to be Sharp's position. I'll quickly touch on Fletcher Sharp a little bit more, and then I'll circle back maybe to Hopewadi. So just on Fletcher Sharp and his potential price changes. So his bottom dollar, he loves the number 67 because his his 3-round average and his season average are the same. He's only played the 2 games, but he's got a break even of negative 67 as well. Plenty of questions about him this week. Number 1 most traded in player. If he averages, what did I give? I gave him an average of 55, and I'm assuming that he's going to be available for you up until and including round 20, because the word is that Ponga is aiming for round 20, but because they've got the bye in round 21, the Knights could very easily just give Ponga an extra week and have him back in round 22. So I'm going to operate on the assumption that you've got Fletcher Sharp until round 20, and including that week as well. So if he averages 55 up until round 20, he'll make you 222k. And I think a 55 average, based on what we've seen from him, is pretty reasonable. Like, he scored, what did he score? I'm just going to have a quick reminder of myself. I mean, he scored that awesome try versus the Storm, 62 versus Melbourne, and then 72 versus Penrith. He scored tries in both of those games. Base, pretty solid, 29 in the first game and 31 in the second game. So he's got a good work rate. I'm just going to quickly try to pull up as well his actual base power in those games, because I do find that's a little bit more useful to understand the floor. He did get a few tackle busts, so probably do need to keep that in mind. But yeah, so his base power average for the season is 44. Looking at the 2 games, 39 and 49. So I think a 40 to 45 is maybe not a reasonable estimate for what his floor is going to be. Parramatta this week's not a bad matchup. Canberra, we've seen, can leak points. And then Manly in round 19. And look, it'll be a Manly team without Cherry Evans again, without Ola Kuatu. Turbo could be an option in that team though. But the next few weeks, they're not like amazing, but they're also not that terrible. And he scored well against tough opposition. So I do like him as a trade in this week. I think he's probably likely going to make you some pretty good money. 222k is what I'm kind of giving him. Even if that average goes up to 60, for sure I can see that number going up to like maybe 250k. So I think as a cash option, for sure, it makes a lot of sense. I'm in a position where I, at the moment, at fullback, have got Teddy and Lehigh Hopewadi. And people were asking, like, Lehigh Hopewadi, at the moment, looks like he's got round 19 cover. But it all depends on where Turbo's named. It looks as though Turbo's going to be named on the extended bench. I still think that either if Turbo plays at centre or if he plays at fullback, I think Hopewadi is going to be dropped anyway. Because if Turbo plays at fullback, then look, Hopewadi is out of the team. If Turbo plays at centre, then I just think what they do is they move Kula back to fullback and Hopewadi drops out anyway. I can't see a situation where if Turbo's at centre that they keep Hopewadi and then they drop Kula. And I just don't see any of Garrick, Saab, Talau or Kula being dropped ahead of Hopewadi. Like, I think Hopewadi in both situations is still the first guy to make way. He had a low score last week as well. He's got a break even of 5. So I think the cash gen is more or less peaked. He might make another 20 or 30k. But Hopewadi down to Fletcher Sharp is a trade I am considering. I actually think it's the most popular trade this week on SuperCoach. And that frees up like 190k. So I'm looking at that as I'm selling a round 19 player for a round 19 player. But I have a feeling that my Fletcher Sharp will actually get a game in round 19 versus Hopewadi. So if I look at it on that basis, then I'm actually gaining a number and gaining 190k in cash. So to me, it feels like a trade that I actually think is still worthwhile, just in case people were umming and ahhing about that particular move. Keith says, Aman, whatever you say, you always say so eloquently. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Will Shaw says, Sharp, is he worth getting in as a stepping stone to Turbo? Yeah, for sure. Assume that he makes 222k, like I've said, maybe even a bit more than that. He'll be up around the 400s, 450k, and then you only maybe need 200k to get to another gun in your center wing or maybe a gun at fullback. So I think I'm personally looking at it because I do think, even though I've made a lot of trades this year to try to free up funds and create cash, I'm trying to really stack my team with as many guns as possible. I'll get to my team later in the stream as well, but I've got a lot of gun center wings, so I've spent a lot of money in my centers. I've spent up big now in second row, having both of Katoa and Fafita, and I do think I want to get Angus Crichton this week as well, potentially. I want to make sure I get in someone like Hynes. I've spent a lot of money across my team, so I still think these kind of trades, making cash, as long as you've still got enough trades in the bank to manage, I still think these cash generating moves are good, and you get cover for round 19 and 20 based on my theory of when I think Ponga comes back. Is KP going to be a run home fullback? He very well could be. I mean, yeah, that's the thing as well. People who are selling CNK, there are so many other fullbacks I think to come back that might be really good. And actually from round 23 onwards, the Knights do have a pretty good run. So you've got round 22 versus Penrith. Let's assume Ponga comes back versus Penrith. There's no rush at all to have to trade him in, right? It's Penrith, and it's away, I think, as well. So you just look at that and say, cool, let's see how he goes. And Ponga he's got 180 break even. So, and he's still 878k. Goodness gracious me, it's still really expensive. But then you've got West Tigers, Sharks, Rabbitohs, Titans, Dolphins. To be fair, I've got my color shading wrong. I would have given the Dolphins a yellow shading, but I must have mucked that up somewhere. So yeah, Ponga for sure still could be a run home option. Again, this kind of helps people, I think, who are maybe looking at offloading CNK. I think there are plenty of other good options out there that you can move to eventually. Sam Hughes to Sharp. Well, look, to be fair, with Joe Chan and Sam Hughes, I put here players don't even bother about trading out. I mean, I get it. Sam Hughes to him would free up 100k. And yeah, Sam Hughes is kind of really not offering that much. So doesn't cover round 19. So yeah, look, in and itself, I think to free up just about 100k probably is just about worth it, because you are getting in round 19 cover as well. Would I go Latrell to Sharp? Now, this is a tricky one. Again, it really comes down to how much do you value this, really comes down to how much do you value getting that cash, because I do think Latrell will eventually be someone you 100% want to have. Just having a quick look at the Rabbitohs long-term draw. So he misses 17 this week. He misses 17. He'll play 18, misses 19, and then comes back in round 20 to the West Tigers. So it's, to be fair though, round 20, Fletcher Sharp would have made you some good coin. You can easily trade back to Latrell. So it's hard. It again comes down to how many trades you have as well. So if you've got maybe 16 or more trades, I'd probably say it's just about worth it. If you've got 15 and less, I'm probably thinking, okay, maybe, say if you're 12, 13 trades, I'd probably say, you know what, I think you really got to, the best way to look at your trade scenarios and is it worth doing these moves is, of my team, who are the guns that I don't have that I definitely want to trade back in? So do I need to trade back in Hynes? Do I want Cleary? Do I want Angus? Do I want Ponga or something? So you've got okay, I've got 5 or 6 guns that I want to get back into my team. You have to assume as well that you're going to need some extra moves than the 5 to create money. So let's assume 3 of those 5 trades needs an extra trade. All of a sudden then you're looking at, okay, 5 plus 3, looking at 8 trades. So if you're on 12, 13 trades, if I do all of that, I'm only going to have 4 or 5 trades spare. So that's why 16 trades feels in that scenario, you'll still have 8 trades left. And so that way, if you want to try set up your team with all your guns by round 21, you still have 6 weeks of 8 trades. So you still have a trade a week up your sleeve. So that's kind of why I like using that as my measuring stick of how many trades should you have left to do certain moves. In your situation, you've got 15 trades. You do have a boost as well. I think having the boost probably means it's just about doable, in my opinion. Should I just nuff Chan? To be honest, like if you nuff Chan, like yes, he's a bit of an AE nightmare, still coming off the bench, but I guess it also depends how many times you realistically actually VC loophole. If you're not doing it that often, then he's fine. Whatever, he does 12, 15 points on the bench. If you are someone who finds that you do use that loophole a lot, then yes, you could nuff. And maybe just someone like a Jack Howarth could be an option potentially if he does pick up dual status. So I'm personally maybe waiting and seeing. But like it's not like he's now at a value that you can create money. He's 224k. So to be honest, I think I'm just gonna ride it out with Chan, the Chan man. I've got a little bit on centers and then front rows before captaincy. I haven't, unfortunately, guys, got something on second row. So what I'll do is when I get to my team, I'll just use the SuperCoach website to talk through second row forwards. But early thoughts for like round 19 back rowers. 100% Fafita, I think, is the number one target there. The other ones who play round 19, you've got Kai Pearce-Paul, Britton Nicholas, Bryce Cartwright, Kolomatangi. They're probably the five that stand out to me. And yeah, Fafita's number one for sure. I think number two in that list, the way that he's going at the moment, probably would be Kolomatangi. I think playing in the middle is really good for him. On him very quickly, I don't think he's likely to be getting dual status just because he's been named at lock, not at prop. But Kolomatangi I really do like. I think his move to the middle has really helped him out. He's a little bit expensive at 678k, but I think really solid base. Rabbitohs are improving. And actually this is relevant question tying into this question. So where's the spin is asking any teams that have no buys left. After this week, the Rabbitohs will have no more buys for the rest of the year. So they cover every single week for the rest of the year. So again, someone like a Kolomatangi, obviously he's on the buy this week, but I think if you can trade him in next week, set and forget, barring any injury, you'll have him for the rest of the year and you have no more buys to worry about. So that's why I've got Fafita number one. Kolomatangi would probably be my number two. 3 and 4 probably a toggling between someone like a Nicholas because of the really soft run and maybe someone like a Bryce Cartwright who looks like he's going to be playing good minutes and we know he's got that attacking potential. Who was the other one I mentioned? I mentioned Nicholas, Bryce Cartwright. Oh, Kai Pearce-Paul. Yeah, Kai Pearce-Paul I don't think for sure is a trade-in. I'm going to assume most people already have. Being named on the bench is not ideal, but I still think I'd be holding because even earlier in the season when he was coming off the bench, so he's had 2 games off the bench this year where he's played 40 minutes in both games, and he scored 43 and 41. Like, it's not the worst in the world. His break-even's 52, so it's not like he's got like a 130, 140 break-even. Like, him getting forward between 45 to 60 in a bye week, I think is pretty useful. So, Pearce-Paul for sure would be bottom of that list, but I do think he would be someone I'd be happy to hold on to. But yeah, Kolomatangi for me, outside Fafita, probably looks like the best round 19 playing back rower. I also don't really have a section on dummy halves at the moment, but I should probably give a shout out to someone like Damien Cook and Api Coruscant have been killing it. Coruscant is actually in the top 10 most traded in players. Look, he looked really good. All I'll say though is that I think the way that he's going, if New South Wales lose this game, maybe they give Coruscant game 3 and he loses that round 19 cover. And it's Roosters and then Melbourne the next 2 weeks. I'd be happy to kind of not have to rush in Coruscant and just maybe guarantee that you get that round 19 number, and then maybe I'd trade him in that week. Damien Cook probably is a little bit of a different story, but look, Cook's on the bye this week for sure, but he could maybe be an option when he comes back next week. I think Jason was asking about potentially selling Harry Grant to him. I don't think I'd be selling. Let me see if I've read that question correctly. Would I consider Cook for Grant for the run home? Cook plays round 19. It's a tough one with Grant, to be honest, because I've owned him all season long, and yes, he has not lived up to the expectations of what we expect from Grant this year. Season average of 64, but I'm just looking at, like, I've got Harry Grant. Do I really want to be selling him? I'm stubborn. I'll probably just be keeping Harry Grant, I reckon, for the year. Other back row was actually to mention, someone here is mentioning Beau Fermor. The other thing to mention as well with your back row, if you are looking at bringing in guys like Cartwright, Kolomatangi, and even Britton Nicholas, for example, just be aware of how many slots you want to keep open in the second row. I speak about this a lot with team setup, but realistically, I think you're going to want to have 2 halfbacks that you reserve, one halfback you reserve every week, maybe 5'8", definitely a fullback, and then I think at least 1 or 2 center wings. So I think 3 out of your 4 reserves every week is going to be in your backs. And then maybe you keep 1 in your second row forward. If I have to think of the best back rowers to own for the rest of the year, Fifita, probably number 1. Katoa, probably number 2. Olukwatu, obviously he's not going to be a round 19 option because he's going to be playing Origin. But round 20, if he's back versus the Titans, he really comes into consideration. And so that's 3 already. So then if you're bringing in a lot of the likes of Nikora, Kolomatangi, just be wary of how much money you're spending in those positions. That's the only thing I'll mention. Because at the moment, I've got Nikora, Pierce Paul, Katoa, and Fifita. I think I've got one other decent back rower. Joe Chan, I guess, if you want to call him that. But yeah, just be wary of that with your back row. Very quickly on center wing, because I know Jermaine Asako is the 4th most traded in player. Someone did ask on Twitter earlier, get Asako now or wait for Lomax? I tried to put some numbers behind both of those guys because I think both of them don't really have the best draw for the rest of the year. So Lomax has, I looked at what I consider easy opposition and what I consider hard opposition. And I kind of was trying to be consistent between the two of them. Asako versus the easy opponents so far this year has averaged 74 versus harder opposition 57. Lomax versus the easy opposition 88 versus the hard opposition 55. So from what I gathered from this is that both of them have pretty similar scoring output against tougher opposition. But when it comes to the easier opposition, we've seen Lomax have an absolutely huge game when he went, 170 versus the Tigers. So I think so far we've probably seen more consistent ceiling from Lomax than Asako. Look, he is 170k more expensive than him, so that is a lot of money that you need to pay extra for Lomax. It still doesn't feel like, I know he's got a low break even, but Dolphins this week, look, could be a decent matchup, but then it's the Roosters, misses round 19, then misses round 20, and then he comes back to Penrith and then Melbourne, and then the Bulldogs. Realistically, until round 24 is probably when I'm going to be looking at Lomax. At least with Asako, he covers 19, and I think he's probably got more softer games until that period of time. So I think if I was trading in one of the two, probably would go Asako just for, I think, better games up until at least round 24 and covers round 19, and he's much, much cheaper as well. So just to split hairs on those two. On Brian To'o, so he's been named this week. He is in the top 10 most traded in players. He's got a negative 23 break even. He's had back-to-back hundreds. I'll admit, I haven't actually seen a lot of the Penrith games in the last few weeks. Just whenever those games were on, I just had some other stuff. So I haven't actually seen a lot of his in-game performances, apart from just knowing that he scored a huge amount of SuperCoach points. Nothing really too different in those games from a work rate point of view. He had 44 and 40 in base in those two games, which is pretty much what he averages for the whole season. So it's more just about that he's had a hat-trick and then scored a try in a few line breaks as well in those games. Penrith are Penrith, so you know that they've got pretty much matchup proof. Just at the price tag, I don't know, sure, this week against the Cowboys is very tempting. I think if you view To'o as a season keeper, then I would probably be just getting him in this week because he does have that negative break even and it's a good matchup versus the Cowboys. But you just have to be aware that, look, he already misses round 19 and there's a very, very good chance that round 20 he gets a rest as well. So 2 of the next 4 you might miss out on To'o, and then for the run home from round 21 you're doing fine. So I think To'o, he's currently not in my plans at the moment to trade in just because I still feel like my centers are pretty stacked at the moment. I don't really have space for him, if I'm being honest, or I don't have anyone that I view as I need to sell for To'o. But if you are making those kind of upgrades, look, I can't knock it because we know To'o is a former gun. But just be wary, I guess, of availability in the next 4 weeks. He might only play 2 of the 4. Mudcrap saying, I didn't play SuperCoach this year. The girlfriend effect, I miss it. Look, don't worry, I've had plenty of highs and lows from playing SuperCoach as well. So it's not all bad if you missed it for a year. I might just quickly, so in terms of center wing targets, I've quickly mentioned Isaac Tongo and Marzu. Honestly, I'm not actually that keen on both of them, just haven't seen enough out of them so far. Tongo, I think, is really an option only when Cleary is back. So at the moment, probably not considering him. Still prefer Mulatalo. Cuz is constantly asking about Dural Skelton, bro. What about Skelton? Look, we just don't know for how long he's going to be. Long-term job security is the issue. He's played the one game. He looked awesome, by the way, versus the Roosters. Don't get me wrong. He looked very, very good. He's got a negative 26 break even, but he won't change in price this week. So I think you can still afford to wait. Next week, he'll come up against the Warriors. then has a buy in round 19. But if next week looks, again, like really good, has a negative break even, then sure. But the issue is that I think once Bulldogs get all of their main guys back, so Connor Tracy's out with a head knock, he'll come back into that team. Stephen Crichton will come back into that team. That will push Carraz onto the wing, pushes Blake Wilson out of the squad. I just think Skelton's his long-term job security is not great. So that's the only issue I have with him. But trust me, he looked awesome last week against the Roosters, but just don't see him as a viable long-term option. Trade in Bizza or Critter. If that Critter is Stephen Crichton, I prefer Toto. I generally prefer wingers in Supercoach, and I think he's playing for a much more attacking team as well. Another guy I haven't mentioned here is potentially DWZ as a cheaper option as well. There was no specific questions about Carraz or Manu or Dom Young, so I think I'll probably skip past that. There's a question here about Terrell May and Curran, so I'll quickly jump onto front row, and then we can chat about captaincy and then my team, and then we can wrap it up. Well, Alex Palmer was asking, what should you do with DWZ? Oh, it's hard to comment. Like, I haven't owned all season. I can understand why he's been a very frustrating option. Look, he is back this week versus the Broncos. His break-even is 72, and to be fair, like, his scores were better when SJ surprisingly wasn't in the team. It's like 74 and 80 before he scored that 13 against Melbourne. Broncos haven't actually been the best defensively this season, so I think you can wait, potentially. The main replacement that I see is Mulatalo. Mulatalo himself still doesn't have the best matchup this week. His break-even is not crazy high. I think if you've got the patience, you can maybe wait a week, maybe even 2 weeks. Give DWZ Broncos and Bulldogs, and then if round 19 you're seeing not enough again, Mulatalo shouldn't still be at a crazy high price where you have to make that much extra money to flip DWZ to Mulatalo. So I think probably most likely, if you think already you're going to do DWZ to Mulatalo in round 19, then you could just jump on him, trading him out this week. But look, Mulatalo doesn't have the best matchup, so you could wait 1 week, and next week when Mulatalo's got the Titans, then potentially, a straight swap from DWZ to him could work out. On the front row, so there was a question here about Terrell May. So where is it coming from? I think it was Joey Manu Fan, if I'm not mistaken, who asked it. Yeah, here we go. Do we think Terrell May plays big minutes this week? Want Crichton, but scared to sell Terrell May. So yeah, a lot of people may be looking at Angus this week because... Oh, sorry. That's right. When I was talking about the best back rollers for the run home, I was like, I feel like there's some guy I'm missing. Yeah, it was Angus. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so going back to my early point. Yeah, Fafito, Eli Katoa, and Angus Crichton, probably the top 3 second row. And then the fourth is probably Ola Kawatu. So yeah, sorry. Shout out to Angus. Can't believe I forgot about you when I was talking about the best back rowers. With Terrell May, I'm happy to keep him for this week. So break-even's pretty manageable at 70. We know he's an absolute beast when he gets the minutes. There's not been many instances this season, apart from the 2 major bye, where he's played those big minutes when Collins has been out. It depends. Again, maybe this question is easier to answer after tomorrow, just to see how many minutes Collins does play. If Collins plays big minutes for Queensland tomorrow, then maybe there's a better argument to say that Terrell May will play bigger minutes. And I just like the matchups as well. Even if he only plays 35-40, with his base power PPM, he still hopefully gets you 45 to 50, and he's got attacking potential in him. Versus coming up against the Tigers and then the Dragons, I think I'm happy to keep Terrell May for the next couple of weeks. Maybe around 19 I reassess and sell. I don't know if I'd be... Look, the question of Terrell May to Angus, apologies, I'm going to sit on the fence on this one and say, ask me again after Origin. I want to see how many minutes Crichton plays. I just want to see what happens in that game, see what happens with Collins, and then we reassess. There was a couple of questions about going Terrell May to Payne Haas. That's probably another one that I'd say I want to see what happens with minutes for some of those front rowers. Curran to Gus, lock it in. Curran I don't think is a must sell, even though he's got the high break even. The duel is handy, but Angus coming up against Tigers and the Dragons. Tigers, the last time he played them, scored 162 points. This is why I was very keen on Angus. Objectively, yes, I think you're getting an upgrade there. So I wouldn't necessarily say lock it in, but I do think it's eventually an upgrade. In terms of front rowers, with AFB now, I'm happy to keep waiting on him. He's now got 130 break even, so he should be going down in price. So again, I might even potentially just go Terrell May to Fanua Blake if Terrell May continues to get these funky minutes. Otherwise, happy enough with Terrell May at least for the next couple of weeks. For more stable options, you've got Payne Haas, but just feels tough to trade in Haas. So at this point in the season, just because of the whole Origin impact, I do feel like he will get some rest in round 20. So not overly keen at the moment, still on trading in Payne Haas. I do like someone like a Joe Tarpany. Just he seems to be upping his work rate. Even his minutes aren't really changing that much, but he is getting more kind of the base power that we've seen from Tarpany in the past. If you want a guy who does play round 19, the ones that stand out are really Stefano Oitikamanu and Samuel Ofainu. So if you want a round 19 guy, maybe Terrell May to Stefano could be a play in round 19. The benefit of Stefano is that he doesn't have a bye until round 26. So you've got him for a pretty fair amount of time as well. But yeah, very, very quick summary on front row. But any front row specific ones about like Payne Haas, Terrell May, which are more dependent on some Origin players, I might defer that until maybe the post-Origin period, post-Origin thoughts that I might have on Thursday or Friday. I want to quickly someone did ask about top 5 center wings for the run home. I might quickly just address that question as well because I didn't really summarize center wing. Tough one. I mean, it's like, I think Karaz, does feature in that. I do think Garrick features in that. So that's 2. I would say Lomax's draw is tough, so I'm not sure if he's going to be in my top 5. I think with the Roosters draw, I would still take one of Dom Young or Manu. Probably Dom Young, just because we've seen a bigger ceiling from him this year. And then a 4th one. Look, Val Holmes, the Cowboys do have a tough run for the rest of the season, and they do still have a couple of buys. They've got 2 more buys still. The benefit with the Cowboys is that they have a lot of their tough games are at home. So they've got Manly, Bulldogs, Sharks, Broncos, and Melbourne are all at home. So some of their home matchups are a little bit better. So I still think, like the Cowboys, while they're leaky, they are still an attacking team. So I still think Val would be in my top 5. So thinking out loud, Dom Young, Val Holmes, Karaz. Who else is there? You know what? I'll probably add Lomax just because he's been so good all season. And then a 5th one, it could be Manu or it could be, I wouldn't say Mulatalo. It could be Asako, but even Asako, to be honest, I don't think I've got enough gut feel about him to say he's my top 5. So I think and Garrick, that's right, and Ruben Garrick. Yeah, those are probably going to be my top 5, I'd say. Lomax, Holmes, Garrick, Karaz, Dom Young. So 2 high upside wingers and 3 goal kickers. That's kind of how I'd like to think my top 5 center wingers. Okay. On captaincy for this week. Also, guys, if you enjoyed the stream so far, please do give it a like. We're just hitting about an hour, 10 minutes, so I'll try to wrap it up pretty soon. How am I getting to Gus this week without trading Terrell May? I'll show you in a second when I get to my team. But on captains for this week, the 2 vice captain matches that I really did like were the Sharks. So, well, not that I really like, but look, if you do own Nicho Hynes, then I do think he's a fair vice captain. Bulldogs have been very, very good at defending opposition halves, but they did concede 109 points to Sam Walker last week. So I think Hynes for sure is a safe VC. Tyler's asking VC Nicho or Tamara Martin. I'd have to go Nicho Hynes, I think. Just ceiling-wise, goal kicking, he's probably much safer in my opinion. I think if you own Jerome Hughes, he would be my vice captain, to be honest. Canberra at home, I think, is a good matchup. They've actually been the 3rd worst at defending opposition halves this year for SuperCoach. So I think Hughes, just the form that he's in, easy VC, in my opinion, I think, if you own Jerome Hughes. And if you want a piece of Eli Katoa as well, Raiders are 4th worst at defending opposition back rowers. So Eli Katoa, Jerome Hughes, I think both of them could be really good. Definitely have a preference for Hughes out of those 2. Other VC potential candidates could be Asako, versus the Dragons, but it is an away matchup, so I'm not sure how much I love it. And then you've maybe got Brian To'o as a potential captain pod or VC, just because of the Cowboys matchup. In terms of captaincy, it feels really harsh to be lumping in on the Roosters because the Tigers did have a very good performance last week, but that does feel like the easy matchup on paper to target this week. Because also remembering that Manly, Titans, and Rabbitohs are on the bye this week. So Teddy, for me, just feels like absolute safe captaincy, I think, this week. I think VC Hughes, Jerome Hughes, Teddy captain, if you've got that combo, personally, I would say lock that in. I think it's a very safe route to go this week. I mean, Teddy had 45 in base last week. Even like 45 in base plus his tackle bust. Like, I think we mentioned he had base power of like in the 70s last week. Even without any major attacking stats, he still scored 84 points. So coming up against Tigers, you can definitely see like close to 90, if not 100. So Teddy for me, very, very solid captain, safe option. If you want to go a little bit more punty, Sam Walker goal kicking. West Tigers have been 4th worst at defending opposition halves. Where's Terrell May in the captains? Look, if Lindsay Collins wasn't on the bench, I probably would have said, yeah, put Terrell May in the captains, but it depends, I think, on Collins and how many minutes he'll play. But look, yeah, Terrell May could be a safe captain option. You can even throw Angus Crichton into this as well. But I'm going to assume a lot of you out there have got Tedesco. I would still prefer Captain Tedesco than I would Terrell May. And then you've got the wingers in Dom Young, and then, of course, you've got Joey Manu as well as a potential option. Probably would lean towards going Dom Young, just ceiling-wise. But, yeah, I think for me, Teddy feels like the very safe one. Just give me a second. I need to plug in my laptop. It's about to run out of battery. All right, there we go. Cool. All right, so I will quickly get onto my team. And yeah, guys, please do like the stream if you have enjoyed it so far. Let me know if you guys can all see that okay as well. So yeah, in terms of what I'm looking at this week, Angus Crichton being named, I kind of mentioned last week I was looking at him potentially as a potential trade-in option. At the moment, I've got VC on Karaz. Actually, I didn't even mention Karaz as a VC, but I just put him as VC at the moment just because of the first matchup of the week. But thinking about it a little bit more, I might end up going Eli Katoa. So Eli Katoa could be someone who I do put the VC on. And Captain Teddy, I really can't see myself, I think, changing that. Happy with my centers. So as I said before, I've spent a lot of money in my center wing. So I've got Karaz, Val, Isako, Iro, Dom Young, Ruben Garrick, and Manu. So at the moment, really happy with that set of centers. Might need to reassess someone like a Hamaso. Someone's actually mentioned that in the chat as well. Definitely could be an option for the run home as well. Halves at the moment, they're all fine. I'll probably most likely, I think, sell Sam Walker to Nicho Hynes, as I mentioned earlier in the stream, but not this week, probably in the next coming weeks. And yeah, the round 19 numbers wise, if I want to quickly show you that, I'm not going to count Joey Lussick. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I've got 10 at the moment. I'm not going to include Lehigh Hopewadi. If I do trade in Fletcher Sharp this week, that gets me to 11. I think for round 19, it's going to be tough to get any more than that. It might just be to try to get to 13, maybe 14. But I think I'm getting to a point now as well where, look, round 19, if I can only get 12 out, but it's 12 quality players, that might just be enough. But yeah, maybe trying to balance, also starting to bring in guns, even though they might miss the major bye weeks. Look, someone like Angus Crichton, who's just looking so good, with 2 really good matchups coming up the next 2 weeks, like he's definitely catching my eye as well. So what I'm thinking of doing this week is Lehigh Hopewadi to Fletcher Sharp. Kind of mentioned that earlier in the stream as some of my reasonings for that. So I think if I do that particular move, I've got 333k in the bank, which gives me, I think, just enough to go Liam Henry to Angus Crichton. Oh, not bad. Because to me, then my back row is pretty much almost sorted. So my front row is Terrell May, Karen, and Samuel Lefanu. Fair enough. Good enough. My back row, I think, and then at that point, I think I've got the 3 best back rows for SuperCoach. I've got Eli Katoa, Fifita, and Angus. Set and forget. Play them every week. And in depth, I've got Britt Nickera and Kai Pearce-Paul. So I could even then at that point, I could consider enough down the track. Maybe sell one of Nickera or Kai Pearce-Paul to enough if I have to, who's dual. Free up like 300k. And I can use that money maybe to then make sure I get Fletcher Sharp back to a gun fullback. And maybe also try to fit back in Cleary or Nicho. I think the way that Sam Walker is going, he should be at a high enough price that with 25k in the bank, I might be able to go Sam Walker to Nicho Hynes directly. Or I just have to make another move to potentially free up the funds. Maybe it's Lussick as enough. But that's some of my ways of freeing up some money down the track. But yeah, I'm pretty tempted to do Liam Henry to Angus. I like Liam Henry's been awesome. He doesn't have to go this week. Like, he's got a pretty manageable break even, but just if Angus plays and he's versing Tigers and then Dragons the next 2 weeks, I just want to lock him in and I don't have to worry about him. And I just don't think he's going to be going down in price that much. Like, a lot of us sold him in round 13, but like, he's got a break even of 86. He just keeps pumping out all of these really big scores. Like, his 3-round average is never just going to go that low that I think he's going to have like a massive cash drop. So I think I might just have to bite the bullet and just pay 800k for Angus. That's kind of how I'm looking at it at the moment. But I think that really bolsters my back row. Gets a good cheapie in Fletcher Sharp. If I do those 2 particular moves this week, numbers are looking much stronger as well. So I'd definitely reserve Angus, Sam Walker, Dom Young, and Joey Manu. That leaves one option for me. Like, I don't even have to play Fletcher Sharp, but with a matchup against the Parramatta Eels, I probably would play him. So instead, what I could do is, I've got a free crack at a VC loophole this week. Joe Chan is a bit of an 80 nightmare. If Lasser gets on the bench, he would also be an 80 nightmare as well. But it gives me a little bit of extra depth. Like, at the moment, not even playing Samuel Lefainu. I could play him instead of Curran. I might not have to play Galvin against the Roosters. So I've got some options. So I think this week I should have enough depth where even if someone like, say, Val Holmes doesn't back up, for example, I've got enough depth cover, I think, to cover that. So I don't mind someone like Val, for example, dropping out, because I think I've got the depth to cover him, and he's got a tough matchup as well against Penrith anyway. But yeah, so that's kind of what I'm looking at doing with my team. I haven't fully confirmed the sit starts, but look, all my Roosters for sure are going to be playing versus the Tigers. This leaves me with 14 trades, so it's getting a little bit tight now, but I really like my back row, like the centers. So I really think at this point, the extra trade that I need to do is bringing back Nicho. That might be one trade from Sam Walker to him. Bring back a gun fullback. That might require a downgrade. And aside from that, maybe a 5'8". But apart from that, maybe the front row. I think the 14 trades is manageable for the amount of guns that I want to bring back into my team. So I think I'm happy enough to make this trade of getting in Fletcher Sharp. And Angus looks potentially very good option. Yeah, I've got Val playing at the moment. That's just on the assumption that he backs up. Of course, if he doesn't back up, then I'll swap in one of my Roosters players. So yeah, I might just have to I might have to have a think about how to set up my team and reserves and stuff. But I'll definitely show you guys all my team and stuff. Or to be honest, what I would do, if Kai Pearce-Paul is on the bench, I'd probably actually not play him, and I'd play Fletcher Sharp instead. Because I think Fletcher Sharp has got a similar enough floor, but he's got some attacking upside. So I think and that's what I'd probably do in that situation. I wouldn't play Kai Pearce-Paul. If Val Holmes doesn't play, then I'll just take one of the reserves and put that onto either Kai Pearce-Paul or I just put it onto Samuel Lefainu because he locks out in the very last game of the round. Nick says, got confused for a sec. Thought I was looking at Amand Center Wings, not high class. I can't say that word, but thank you, Nick. I'll take the compliment. Appreciate it. All right, guys. 1 hour 19, 7:30 on the dot. I think we'll wrap up the stream there. It's time for me to go watch MasterChef, but hopefully you all enjoyed that stream. I should be back on probably Friday with a quick video just to go through some post-origin thoughts, but appreciate all of you tuning in. Do please give the stream a thumbs up if you did enjoy it. I'll put the audio out for this as well on Spotify as soon as I can. But thank you all for tuning in. If I didn't get to any of your questions, keep hitting me up. We'll try to get back to you if I can. But thanks everyone. Take care. And we'll see you all in the next one. Cheers.